The world professional heavyweight wrestling champion from Blackwell, Oklahoma at 17.5 stone is Jack Brisco. And a beautiful world championship belt. This is not a title match, ladies and gentlemen, but international wrestlers.
He wasn't screaming for attention. He wasn't doing flips off the top rope every 5 seconds. Jack Brisco was quietly, ruthlessly brilliant. And if you missed him, you missed wrestling history. Jack Brisco was one of those wrestlers who just had it. He didn't need flashy costumes or wild speeches to get people's attention. He was the kind of guy who let his wrestling do the talking. And boy, could he wrestle. His technical skills were top-notch, his athleticism was unmatched, and his credibility in the ring was undeniable. He was one of the best, plain and simple.
Of course, and I had that much respect for Jack because, he'd been an NWA World Champion, and he was a good one. One of the greatest wrestling matches I ever saw.
Unlike some wrestlers who got caught up in scandals or drama, Jack Brisco's career was pretty clean. But that doesn't mean people don't have things to say about him. Wrestling fans love to debate about careers, about title reigns, about whether someone should have done things differently. And with Brisco, there are a few things that come up now and then. Wrestling is full of big, loud personalities, guys who love to talk, villains who make people boo, and performers who create crazy storylines to keep fans entertained. But Brisco wasn't like that. He was straightforward, clean-cut, and focused on wrestling. Some fans absolutely loved that about him. They saw him as a true athlete, someone who didn't need gimmicks. Others, though, thought maybe he wasn't exciting enough for the mainstream audience. He wasn't as flashy as some of the other wrestlers of his time, and maybe that held him back from being an even bigger star. But in the end, whether people found him exciting or not, no one could argue that he wasn't a great wrestler. Then there's the talk about his time as the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. He won the title in July 1973 and held on to it for over 15 months before losing it in October 1974. Back then, long title reigns weren't unusual. The NWA liked its champions to be seen as dominant, and one way to do that was by keeping the belt on them for a long time. But some people wonder if Brisco's reign was too long. Maybe if he had shorter reigns with more intense rivalries, things would have been even more exciting. Others say his reign was perfect. It showed how skilled and credible he was as a champion. Either way, his time as champion helped cement his place in wrestling history. Later in his career, Brisco moved into tag team wrestling with his brother, Gerald Brisco. Together, they became the Brisco brothers and found a lot of success. They won championships, built a reputation as a strong team, and became legends in their own right. But some fans wonder, did moving into tag team wrestling take away from his singles legacy? Would he have been remembered even more as a singles star if he had stuck with that path? It's an interesting question, but the truth is, Brisco was great no matter what. Whether he was wrestling alone or with his brother, he was respected and admired. One of the things that made Brisco stand out was his professionalism. A lot of wrestlers, even some of the biggest names, have had issues behind the scenes. Arguments, bad behavior, personal struggles. But Brisco wasn't like that. He was disciplined, focused, and respected by everyone who worked with him. He avoided the drama that some other wrestlers got caught up in, and because of that, his reputation stayed strong throughout his career and beyond. Sadly, Jack Brisco passed away on February 1st, 2010, at the age of 68. He had been dealing with heart issues for a while, and when he underwent surgery, complications arose. Unfortunately, he didn't make it through. His passing was a huge loss for the wrestling world. When the news broke, tributes poured in from fellow wrestlers, promoters, and fans. People shared stories about how talented he was, how professional he was, and how much of an impact he had on the sport. He was remembered not just as a great wrestler, but as a great person. Even though he's gone, his legacy still lives on. He may not have been the most theatrical personality in wrestling, but he was one of the best pure wrestlers to ever step into the ring. His career was full of achievements, and he helped shape the sport into what it is today. Now let's talk in detail what really made him a fan favorite. Before he ever stepped into a professional wrestling ring, Jack Brisco was already a champion. He wrestled at the University of Oklahoma, one of the top schools for amateur wrestling, and he was one of the best. Unlike many wrestlers who learned the craft after deciding to go pro, Brisco had already spent years training, competing, and winning in real wrestling matches. He didn't just pretend to be a great wrestler, he actually was one. This background gave him an edge that set him apart. In a time when wrestling still tried to keep up the illusion of being real, Brisco didn't have to pretend. His movements, his skill, and the way he carried himself all felt completely authentic. Fans didn't just see him as another performer in the ring. They saw him as a real competitor, and that was rare. When Brisco wrestled, he didn't waste time with unnecessary flash. He focused on technique, skill, and strategy. He didn't jump off the top ropes or do dangerous stunts just to get a reaction. Instead, he used precise takedowns, smooth counters, and tight holds. Every move he made was controlled and had a purpose. He made technical wrestling look effortless, flowing from one move to the next like it was second nature. Now, for the real fans out there who really miss the legend he was, here's a quick rundown of his epic career. Freddie Joe Jack Brisco was born on September 21st, 1941, in Blackwell, Oklahoma. He grew up in a big family with 5 siblings, and from a young age, he developed a love for wrestling. As a kid, he admired legendary wrestlers like Lou Thez, Danny Hodge, and Dick Hutton. Little did he know that one day, he would become one of the most respected wrestlers of all time. Jack's journey into wrestling started in high school. He wasn't just good, he was outstanding. He won 3 state championships and dominated every opponent he faced. But wrestling wasn't the only sport he excelled in. He was also an all-state fullback for his high school football team. With his natural athletic ability, he had the option to pursue football at the University of Oklahoma, but he turned it down. Instead, he chose to continue wrestling at Oklahoma State University. It was a decision that would shape his future. At Oklahoma State, Jack quickly made a name for himself. He was a 2-time All-American and, in 1965, won the NCAA Division I National Championship in the 191-pound weight class. What made this victory even more special was that he became the first part Native American to win an NCAA Wrestling National Championship. His dominance on the mat was undeniable. During his senior year, he was never taken down, not even once. That level of skill, strength, and determination showed that he was ready for something bigger. After his success in college wrestling, Jack transitioned into the world of professional wrestling. He didn't waste any time proving himself. In 1965, he won his first professional championship by defeating Don Kent for the NWA Missouri Junior Heavyweight Championship. Though he didn't hold the title for long, it was just the beginning of his career. He spent the next few years traveling across different wrestling territories, winning titles and earning the respect of fans and fellow wrestlers. By the late 1960s, Jack had made his way to championship wrestling from Florida. This was where he truly began to shine. In 1969, he won the NWA Florida Southern Heavyweight Championship by defeating the Missouri Mauler. His skills in the ring made him one of the top wrestlers in the promotion. He didn't just succeed as a singles competitor, he also thrived in tag team wrestling. He teamed up with his younger brother, Gerald Jerry Brisco, and together they became one of the best tag teams in wrestling. Jack and Jerry won the NWA Florida Tag Team Championship multiple times, taking on some of the best teams in the business. One of their most memorable rivalries was with the Funk brothers, Dory Funk Jr. and Terry Funk. The Brisco brothers and the Funks had some incredible matches, filled with technical wrestling and hard-hitting action. Fans loved watching them compete because it was pure wrestling at its best. As Jack continued to climb the ranks, he set his sights on the most prestigious prize in professional wrestling, the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. On July 20th, 1973, his dream became a reality when he defeated Harley Race to win the title. It was a moment that cemented his place in wrestling history. Becoming the NWA World Heavyweight Champion wasn't just about holding a title, it was about representing the best in the sport. Jack took that responsibility seriously. He defended the championship against the top wrestlers in the world, proving time and time again why he was the best. Jack held the NWA World Heavyweight Championship for over 2 years, an impressive reign that showcased his incredible talent. His style was different from many other wrestlers of his time. While others relied on flashy moves or big personalities, Jack let his wrestling speak for itself. He was a true technician, mastering holds, counters, and submissions. His matches were a showcase of skill and strategy, making him one of the most respected champions in NWA history. In 1975, his reign as world champion came to an end when he lost the title to Terry Funk. But even after losing the championship, Jack continued to be a top competitor. He won numerous titles throughout the late 1970s and early 1980s, including multiple NWA World Tag Team Championships with his brother Jerry. The Brisco brothers remained one of the most dominant tag teams in wrestling, always putting on incredible matches and showing why they were one of the best duos in the sport. As champion, Jack traveled all over the world, defending his title against some of the biggest names in wrestling. He took on tough competitors like Johnny Valentine, Stan Stasiak, Abdullah the Butcher, Gene Kiniski, and The Sheik. No matter where he went, fans packed arenas to see him wrestle. He even traveled to Australia, where he successfully defended his championship against local hero Spiros Arion. One of his most famous title defenses happened in Japan, where he faced Giant Baba. On December 4th, 1974, Jack lost the championship to Baba in front of a roaring Japanese crowd. But just 4 days later, he won it back, proving that he wasn't going to let go of his title so easily. Jack continued his reign until December 10th, 1975, when he lost to Terry Funk, reigniting the legendary feud between the Brisco brothers and the Funk family. After his time as world champion, Jack kept wrestling in different territories, continuing to build his legacy. In 1976, he made his way to Memphis, where he took on fan favorite Jerry Lawler and won the NWA Southern Heavyweight Championship. Later that year, he also won the NWA Missouri Heavyweight Championship by defeating Bob Backlund. Even when he wasn't competing as a world champion, Jack Brisco was still a force to be reckoned with in professional wrestling. In 1977, Jack returned to Florida, where he and his brother Jerry became one of the most dominant tag teams in wrestling history. Around this time, Jack also won the NWA National Heavyweight Championship after beating Terry Funk in a tournament final. As his career continued, he kept piling up title victories, including multiple reigns as NWA North American Tag Team Champion. Jack even took his talents to Puerto Rico, where he won the WWC Caribbean Heavyweight Championship in 1981. He and Jerry also won the WWC North American Tag Team Championship from Los Pastores, a team better known as the Bushwhackers. Meanwhile, in Missouri, Jack defeated Ted DiBiase to capture his second NWA Missouri Heavyweight Championship. He was proving that even in his later years, he was still one of the best in the world. In 1982, Jack returned to Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, where he had memorable battles with legends like Roddy Piper and Paul Jones. He won the NWA Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight Championship multiple times, trading it back and forth with his rivals. But his greatest success in Mid-Atlantic came when he and Jerry won the NWA World Tag Team Championship 3 times, feuding with Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood in a series of classic matches. In 1984, the Brisco brothers made one of the most controversial moves in wrestling history. They were part owners of Georgia Championship Wrestling, and they helped broker a deal to sell their shares to Vince McMahon, allowing the World Wrestling Federation, WWF, to expand even further. This decision shocked many in the wrestling world and played a significant role in changing the landscape of the business. Jack wrestled his final high-profile match on December 28, 1984, in Madison Square Garden. He and Jerry challenged Adrian Adonis and Dick Murdoch for the WWF Tag Team Championship, but the match ended in a double countout. Not long after, Jack decided he had seen enough of the wrestling business. He had grown frustrated with the direction the sport was heading. There were fewer amateur wrestlers entering the professional ranks, and the focus was shifting towards soap opera-style storylines rather than pure wrestling. At the age of 43, he walked away from the ring for good. Even though he retired from wrestling, Jack Brisco remained a legend in the industry. In 2005, he was inducted into the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame, and in 2008, he and Jerry were inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Outside of wrestling, Jack ran the Brisco Brothers Body Shop in Florida for over 30 years, working alongside his brothers Gerald and Bill. Sadly, in his later years, Jack suffered from health issues, including pneumonia and back problems. He had been a heavy smoker, which contributed to his declining health. On February 1st, 2010, he passed away at the age of 68 due to complications from open-heart surgery. At the time of his death, he was surrounded by loved ones and was under the care of his close friend, former wrestler turned nurse, Bugsy McGraw. Jack Brisco's impact on wrestling is undeniable. He was one of the greatest champions of the 1970s and an inspiration to future generations of wrestlers. His name is still mentioned with respect whenever discussions about the greatest wrestlers in history take place. Even though he is no longer with us, his legacy lives on. Jack Brisco was more than just a champion. He was a symbol of hard work, dedication, and pure wrestling excellence. His influence can still be seen in today's wrestling world, and his story will continue to be told for years to come. He may be gone, but in the hearts of wrestling fans, Jack Brisco will never be forgotten.